Haruki Ono, a first-year high school student, finishes his classes for the day and is immediately invited by his friends to join them for an evening anime session. However, he declines without hesitation, firmly believing that anime is best enjoyed alone. With that decision made, he heads home, expecting a peaceful time to unwind. But as soon as he steps inside, his peace is shattered. Yoda Akari is there. She, his sister's ever-present friend, practically treats their house as her second home. Sitting comfortably, she greets him with a giggle and cheerfully invites him to have snacks with her as if she is the actual resident and he is the guest. His face immediately darkens. His patience wears thin as he wonders, yet again, why she keeps showing up at their house every single day. More baffling is how she manages to feel so at ease there, sprawling on their couch. Yoda, unfazed by his reaction, casually stretches and complains about the sheer exhaustion she endures thanks to her 2-hour-long commute from school to her house. Haru, unannounced, reminds her that, no matter how cozy she finds it, this is not her home. She hardly acknowledges his disapproval and instead informs him that his sister, Misaki, is busy with student council meetings and will be home late. Scrolling through her phone, she suddenly perks up and announces the arrival of an upcoming anime. With excitement sparkling in her eyes, she expresses a strong desire to watch it together. Haru, remaining steadfast in his solitary anime-watching principles, instantly refuses. However, Yoda is the kind of person who listens selectively. Without missing a beat, she grabs his arm with determined enthusiasm, completely disregarding his clear lack of interest. His protest is met with her best pleading expression, and despite his better judgment, he caves in. At 4:30, they settle on the couch, ready to begin their anime session. Haru, still skeptical about this forced arrangement, asks what they are about to watch. Yoda, still bubbling with excitement, shoves her phone in his face, displaying the title Oji-san has been reincarnated. One look at it, and his enthusiasm plummets even further. He questions her ability to dig up such peculiar anime, but her excitement remains unwavering. Resigned to his fate, he sighs and tells her to play it on the TV. Minutes pass, and as the anime unfolds, horror suspicions are confirmed. This is not his cup of tea. He watches with an expression bordering on pain, struggling to find any entertainment value. Yoda has fallen asleep. A surge of disbelief washes over him. The one who insisted on watching the anime is now snoozing away as if this were some kind of lullaby. His irritation spikes, but before he can fully process his frustration, he stiffens. Her head somehow has landed on his shoulder. His muscles tense, mind screams. Panicking, he attempts to shift her back into an upright position, but Yoda remains completely unbothered by his struggles. Her peaceful, oblivious face remains nestled against him. He hesitates as he contemplates his next move, his internal conflict intensifying when he catches a whiff of her shampoo. Faint, pleasant scent reaches him, sending an unexpected wave of nervousness down his spine. His fingers twitch as he wrestles with his emotions, but the situation takes a dangerous turn when she starts slipping further. His immediate reaction is to grab her arm to prevent her from fully collapsing, but this only results in them getting even closer. His heart pounds, his eyes flicker nervously over her sleepy expression, and for the first time, he realizes she actually looks kind of cute. Just as this chaotic mess reaches peak awkwardness, the door slams open. The universe, in all its cruel humor, has decided to make things even worse. Misaki, his sister, strides into the house. Pure survival instinct kicks in. Haru flings Yoda away in sheer panic as if he has just been caught committing a crime. Yoda, abruptly woken from her nap, blinks in confusion. Misaki, now standing before them, takes in the scene, eyes narrowing. Yoda, scrambling to save herself, quickly explains that she dozed off while watching anime. Haru, still recovering from the near heart attack, mutters under his breath that he is barely safe. As the chaos settles, he rubs the spot on his shoulder where Yoda had been resting her head. His expression remains neutral, but a new thought in his mind is that watching anime with someone else isn't so bad. The next day, Haruki is busy in the kitchen, carefully preparing a meal. The sound of the door opening reaches his ears, followed by an all-too-familiar voice. Yoda-senpai steps into the house, loudly declaring her hunger. Without hesitation, she flops onto the couch, making herself comfortable in a way that immediately irritates Haru. His frustration rises as he watches her settle in, treating his home like her personal lounge. Drawn by the scent of sizzling food, Yoda curious. Lai drifts into the kitchen. Haru, despite his usual reluctance, offers to make something for her as well. Peering over Haru's shoulder, she admires his cooking, barely listening as he mentions it's for his sister. The moment the words leave his mouth, she lights up with uncontainable joy. In an enthusiastic gesture, she reaches out and playfully ruffles his hair, declaring that cooking is no easy task, so she has to assist him. His expression shifts to one of pure disbelief as he processes her words. The idea of Yoda knowing how to cook is something he has never considered. Determined to prove herself, she immediately begins listing the names of various sauces, as if that alone qualifies her as a master chef. Amused by her confidence, Haru teases her about her logic, questioning why her knowledge revolves entirely around sauces. Without hesitation, she responds as if it is an undeniable truth of the universe. While she continues to defend her expertise, her attention shifts back to this food. The irresistible aroma tempts her, and before she can stop herself, she reaches out and takes a bite. The moment the flavors hit her tongue, she beams with satisfaction, loudly proclaiming how delicious it is. Haru, now thoroughly exasperated, scolds her for eating without permission. However, her carefree apology and the way she glances at him leave him momentarily bewildered. Before he can fully regain his composure, she takes another bold step, grabbing a piece of food and pushing it into his mouth. His eyes widen in shock as he instinctively covers his mouth with his hand. Amused by his flustered reaction, she giggles and compliments how cute he looks. He, on the other hand, remains speechless, struggling to process what just happened. A moment later, he winces, realizing the food is far too hot to eat fresh off a stove. Meanwhile, Yoda, who has eaten the same food moments ago, appears completely unaffected. Muttering under his breath, he comments on how flat and round her taste buds must be, making it impossible for her to feel the heat. Rather than ignoring him, she leans in closer, sticking out her tongue as if demanding proof of his claim. Haru stiffens as her unexpected cuteness momentarily disarms him. His mind scrambles to maintain composure. Quickly shifting gears, he focuses on chewing the food, using its taste as a convenient distraction. His attempt at regaining control over the situation does not go unnoticed. Yoda, watching his expression closely, grabs another piece of food and happily continues eating. She remarks on its deliciousness, prompting him to ask why she looks so proud. As he watches her satisfied expression, he wonders if food simply tastes better when shared. The next day, she is at his home again. Outside, the rain pours heavily, drenching her completely, her clothes soaked and dripping water onto the floor. As she steps in, she begins explaining how the sudden downpour caught her off guard, leaving her in this drenched state. He listens but remains indifferent, merely stating that the rainy season is in full swing, making such incidents unsurprising. Shivering slightly, she asks for a towel. He, however, reminds her once again that this is not her home, yet he still goes to fetch one for her. As he hands it over, his eyes of her shirt. The moment she senses his gaze, she swiftly crosses her arms over her chest, attempting to conceal herself, and immediately calls him a pervert. But he extends the towel toward her without a glance. She takes the towel and begins drying herself, rubbing it over her arms and neck. Despite the brief tension, she once again finds herself entangling him in her presence. Slowly, she removes her socks, her bare feet now exposed. A knowing smile forms on her lips as she notices his reaction, and with a slight blush, she makes a remark about her wet socks. The comet sends a subtle shiver down his spine, but he quickly composes himself. Still blushing, she informs him that she is going to borrow his shower, her tone teasing yet decisive. Before disappearing into the bathroom, she firmly forbids him from peeking. His expression hardens with irritation as he retorts that he would never do such a thing, then gestures for her to move along. Once she steps inside and closes the door, he exhales and drops onto the couch. Horror stands in front of the fridge, scanning its contents, contemplating what to cook for dinner. Just as he is lost in thought, Yoda steps out of the shower. Her voice suddenly breaks the quiet moment, calling him over with urgency. Sensing trouble, Haru rushes to her. There she is, standing with nothing but a flimsy towel, completely unbothered by the situation, while he, on the other hand, feels the heat rising to his ears. She casually explains her predicament, no change of clothes. With absolute confidence, she demands he fetch her something from Misaki's wardrobe. Haru, still frozen in shock, takes a second to process. Going into his sister's room is basically a death wish. Misaki would murder him on sight. Yoda, unfazed, shrugs and presents a more reasonable alternative, his own clothes. And she doesn't give him much of a choice, adding that if he doesn't hurry, she might catch a cold. The guilt trip works like a charm. Scrambling, he grabs one of his shirts and trousers. As she slips into them, the fit is unexpectedly perfect, which leaves Haru weirdly impressed. Maybe his wardrobe is more versatile than he thought. Yoda, however, finds something else amusing his height. With a playful grin, she ruffles his hair and starts comparing their heights like a scientist taking notes. Haru informs her that they have exactly a 7 centimeters difference, but since he's still growing, the gap won't last forever. She simply smiles, nodding in agreement, but when he asks for clarification on that mysterious smile, she brushes it off, leaving him mildly annoyed and deeply confused. She walks out looking completely rejuvenated, her damp, fluffy hair adding to the effect. She suddenly lifts his borrowed shirt close to her face and takes a deep sniff. His eyes widen in alarm. He asks about the smell as he has just washed it. Before he can spiral into unnecessary self-doubt, she lets out a giggle and says it smells like him, which apparently reminds her of her grandma's house. Now thoroughly suspicious, Haru watches her with narrowed eyes. Later, they head to the market to pick up groceries for dinner. The plan seems simple enough, but as soon as they step inside, Yoda-senpai completely loses control. As she continues her little grocery adventure, she grabs a burger steak pack, holding it up for approval. Before he even responds, she dashes off again, only to return with an armful of snacks and food items that could probably feed a small army. Haru, unimpressed, reminds her that she is no longer a kid and should put most of them back. Yoda, however, just stares at him, claiming that everything she picked looks delicious. Shaking his head, Haru wanders off and picks up a video game. He wasn't expecting to see something like this in an anime-themed section. Before he can think too much about it, Yoda bursts into giggles and teases him, calling him a little kid. Instantly, his irritation flares up. Moving on, he grabs a packet of carrots, intending to use them for garnishing. Yoda's reaction is immediate and dramatic. Her expression twists into something between discomfort and horror. Harg notices right away and casually points out her obvious dislike instead of admitting it. She stiffens, attempting to lie, but her entire demeanor betrays her. He sees right through her pathetic excuse and with a smirk declares that she is the real child here. Her cheeks puff up with annoyance. In retaliation, she suddenly starts picking random items into the trolley, acting with exaggerated movements like a stubborn little kid throwing a tantrum. Aru sighs, watching her antics unfold. No matter how much she denies it, Yoda is just a child pretending to be an adult. After returning home, they waste no time setting up the video game they bought from the market. Both of them are completely focused and determined to win. The competition is fierce, but Haru, armed with skill and experience, dominates the game and claims victory. Yoda, clearly not thrilled about losing, immediately starts complaining. She insists that, as a girl, she doesn't have as much understanding of these kinds of games. To make matters worse, Haru had the nerve to use a muscle-bound fighter, making the match feel even more unfair. Instead of sympathizing, he burst into laughter, smugly declaring that she would need at least 100 years of experience before she could even think about beating him. Not wanting to back down, she decides to take a different approach. She attempts to sway him with pure cuteness. As the second round begins, Horror smirks with absolute confidence, already picturing another flawless victory. Yoda, however, comes up with the most ridiculous plan imaginable. Abandoning all logic, she suddenly reaches over and starts tickling his stomach with her fingers. The results are immediate and disastrous for Haru. His body betrays him as he squirms uncontrollably, struggling to keep his composure. Taking full advantage of his helpless state, Yoda delivers the final strike in the game. The screen flashes, declaring her the winner, and she jumps up in pure triumph, cheering for herself. Haru, still recovering from the unexpected attack, calls foul play. That was blatant cheating. Yoda, with zero remorse, counters by saying that if he had just been more defensive, he wouldn't have lost. Haru, completely exhausted and utterly betrayed, asks whether she has even the slightest sense of shame. They are still locked in an intense battle, neither willing to back down. Yoda, having tasted victory once, decides to pull the same sneaky trick again. A mischievous spark lights up in her eyes, and Haru instantly K's up on her intentions. Before she can make her move, he reacts swiftly, wrapping his arms tightly around her belly. If she thinks she can outsmart him twice, she's got another thing coming. Feeling triumphant, he believes he has finally figured out how to counter her underhanded tactics. But just as he starts focusing on the game again, Yoda seizes the opportunity to strike. She attempts another tickle attack, but this time he is ready. Without thinking, he grabs her hand aggressively, blocking her move. In the process, however, his other hand lands directly on her belly. The moment freezes between them. Her eyes widen in dramatic fashion as she gasps and covers her mouth, putting on the most exaggerated expression of fear imaginable. She looks at him as if he has just committed the ultimate betrayal and calls him a desperate loser. Clearly enjoying herself, she accuses him of doing anything just to win. She calls him a cheater, but he snaps back that he doesn't want to hear it from her. At this point, they have reached the 18th round. Out of all the matches, Haru has managed to win only one. Yoda, meanwhile, is practically glowing with excitement, still full of energy and ready to keep going. Haru, on the other hand, is sinking deeper into the crushing reality of defeat. This isn't just a video game anymore, it's psychological warfare, and he is clearly on the losing side. After finishing his classes, Haru quickly packs his bag, eager to rush home. The thought of watching his favorite anime fills him with excitement, and though he usually enjoys watching at night, today he feels like embracing watching it live. As soon as he steps through the door, his eyes land on Yoda-senpai sitting on the couch. She greets him but oddly hides her face, immediately making him suspicious. Then he spots the unexpected: she's wearing glasses. Yoda, looking unusually self-conscious, explains that her contact lenses broke, forcing her to wear them. Instead of responding right away, Haru just stares, which makes her shift uncomfortably. She fidgets, convinced that the glasses look terrible on her, and in a desperate attempt to avoid his gaze, she tries to hide her face. Haru, never one to let things slide, casually points out that she doesn't seem to have taken a shower. Flustered, Yoda quickly fires back that she simply forgot to remove her glasses before coming over. Rather than let her embarrassment consume her, Haru decides to compliment her, telling her she looks refreshing. Yoda immediately goes into defense mode. She suddenly covers his eyes with her hands as if it's the most natural thing to do. Haru, however, protests. He needs to watch his anime, but now he can't see a thing. Yoda and Haru sit at the same table, both engaged in studying. Haru is struggling with a problem, staring at the question as if it might solve itself. He debates whether he should ask Yoda-senpai for help, but doubts it would be useful. She yawns and complains about exams. Her disinterest in academics puzzles him when she suddenly questions the entire purpose of studying for exams. Lost in thought, Haru finds himself genuinely considering her words. At the same time, he wonders if he should just wait for his sister and ask her for help in the evening. However, as a science student, she might not be able to solve a math problem like this either. Yoda, catching his troubled expression, casually asks if he is struggling with something. With no other choice left, he finally gives in and asks for her help. To his complete surprise, she explains the problem with such clarity that it suddenly seems ridiculously easy. His eyes widen in astonishment as everything clicks into place. Noticing his shock, she questions his reaction. He admits he never expected to learn anything from her. Amused, she laughs as he quickly apologizes for underestimating her. Smirking, she reminds him that as his sister's classmate, she's his senior and excels in both science and math. Later, while studying English, she turns to Haru for help. Seizing the moment, he teases her about the irony of a senior needing a junior's help. Seated at the study table, Yoda suddenly shifts her attention away from her books and poses a question to Haru. He, completely absorbed in his studies, dismisses it without much thought, unwilling to play whatever game she has in mind. However, Yoda refuses to let it go, insisting that he at least try to notice something different about her. Growing impatient with his lack of interest, she launches into a complaint, declaring that he has absolutely no understanding of a girl's emotions. With a personality like his, she warns, he is bound to remain single forever. Haru, unfazed by her remark, mentally reassures himself that this is perfectly fine. His beloved 2D girls are more than enough. Determined to get his attention, she strikes various poses, urging him to take a closer look. Left with no choice, Haru scans her for changes, guessing accessories. Then her uniform, then makeup, each met with an immediate rejection. Frustrated by his cluelessness, she suddenly leans over the table, her face inches from his. The unexpected closeness makes the moment far more intense than necessary. With unwavering determination, she demands he observe properly this time. Flustered, Haru instinctively looks away, claiming it's impossible to notice anything from this close. Exasperated, Yoda throws up her hands, declaring him hopeless at understanding girls. Curious at last, he asks for the answer. With a dramatic drum roll, she reveals the obvious change. She turned her bangs by exactly 5 millimeters. Haru stares in disbelief. Yoda simply shakes her head, sign that it'll take Lil Brother a lifetime to figure these things out. As an otaku, Haru wakes up early, eager for his morning anime. Just as he settles in, the doorbell rings, shattering his peace. Annoyed, he wonders who would visit so early, especially with his sister still asleep. Dragging himself to the door, he opens it to find Yoda-senpai standing there, not in her usual attire but in casual clothes. Her tied-up hair, shorts, and cap make her look completely different, momentarily catching him off guard. She greets little brother cheerfully, asking for Masaki, but Haru barely registers her words, still fixated on her unfamiliar outfit. Noticing his reaction, Yoda smirks and playfully rolls up her sleeves, teasing that she should reveal more. Snapping out of his daze, Haru scoffs, denying any interest, but Yoda only grins, casually mentioning that she'll wear even shorter clothes once summer arrives. Before he can recover, she tilts her head and asks if she looks cute. His face heats up slightly, but he stubbornly avoids answering. Instead, he points out how different her hairstyle looks. Instantly pleased, she teases him for noticing this change when he failed to see her trimmed bangs. Unwilling to give in, Haru insists her hairstyle is more obvious. Undeterred, Yoda keeps pestering him for an answer. Finally, at his limit, he waves her off and decides to wake his sister instead. Haru is deeply engrossed in his anime, fully absorbed in the world of his favorite characters, when Yoda suddenly appears, declaring her thirst like an adventurer lost in a desert. Without waiting for a response, she rushes toward the fridge, yanking it open with the determination of someone on a treasure hunt. As she grabs a juice box, she doesn't stop there. Her hands begin to rustle through shelves, clearly searching for something else to snack on. Annoyed, Haru reminds her not to go digging around, but she pays no attention, instead picking up a few more items as if she's grocery shopping in his kitchen. Turning around, Yoda casually asks if there are any snacks, and Haru, while trying to keep his composure, gives a quick answer. Unfortunately for him, thanks to her shorter height, his eyes unintentionally land somewhere else. He twirls his neck away so fast that it nearly looks like a glitch in the animation he was watching, as if that alone could erase the moment from existence. With a playful smirk, Yoda seizes the moment. As she exits the kitchen, she teasingly suggests that if he found that amusing, she might wear an even cuter outfit next time. His face heats up instantly, and without hesitation, he firmly insists she stick to her school uniform. She simply laughs, sauntering away with her juice and snacks. Later, they sit side by side, diligently, or at least one of them is, focusing on their studies. Just as horror gets into the flow of solving his problems, Yoda suddenly stops writing, dramatically sighing as if she has just endured hours of intense labor. She complains about being bored, her tone dripping with exaggerated despair. Haru glances at her, his expression silently questioning the reason for this newfound tragedy. She immediately explains, as if it's the most obvious thing in the world, that he is simply too silent while studying. Without looking up from his notebook, he casually suggests she go home. Her response is swift and blunt. If she goes home, she knows she won't study at all. Curious about where this conversation is headed, Haru asks what exactly she's trying to say. That's when she launches into a completely unrelated thought, sharing how adorable it would be if they spoke in dialects. She looks genuinely fascinated. Haru stares at her, baffled by the sheer randomness of her thought process. Before he can stop himself, he asks what's suddenly wrong with her. But Yoda, entirely in her own world, excitedly proposes a game, speaking in dialects while studying. Haru struggles to process the situation. Moments ago, they were reviewing math equations, and now she wants to turn their study session into a poorly executed Kansai-ben comedy skit. Seeing his lack of enthusiasm, Yoda pouts and insists he join in. When he refuses, she puts on her best sad face, accusing him of not doing even this small thing for her. Haru, unfazed, reminds her that failing grades mean extra lessons, and she should focus before she ends up buried under makeup tests. But Yoda, undeterred, insists little brother also needs a break. He scoffs, pointing out that she's been on a break this entire time. Besides, adds people from Kansai would probably be offended by her fake dialect. Yoda, utterly unbothered, shrugs and dismisses his concern with a dramatic pout. Sighing in defeat, Haru turns back to his work, hoping for some peace. But Yoda, ever the distraction, soon gives up pretending to study and plops her head onto the book, lazily playing with her eraser like a bored cat. Just as he gets back into his rhythm, she disrupts it yet again, this time lamenting how he never notices her feelings. Haru pauses, his pencil hovering over the page, now fully alert. He looks at her, waiting for some grand confession. Instead, she shouts out the heartbreaking truth. She's hungry and needs food. Yoda sits at the table, absent-mindedly murmuring about how the world would be a much better place if exams simply ceased to exist. Haru, caught off guard by her sudden declaration, raises an eyebrow and questions the randomness of her wishful thinking. Without missing a beat, she launches into a dramatic monologue about the horrors of exam season, the endless studying, the sleepless nights, the cruel injustice of having to use one's brain for extended periods. Haru shrugs, unimpressed, pointing out that this is completely normal before exams. Deciding that complaining won't make exams vanish, Yoda sighs and begrudgingly returns to writing. But just as she starts focusing, fate, or rather an eight-legged menace, decides to intervene. Tiny spider lands on her arm. The moment she spots the intruder, she freezes before letting out a shriek loud enough to wake the dead. Before Haru can react, the situation worsens. The spider leaps and vanishes inside her shirt. She flails, jumps, and twists in a frantic attempt to shake it off, her hands desperately swiping at her back. Her panic reaches new heights as she pleads for help. Haru, torn between concern and amusement, hesitates before asking what exactly he's supposed to do. Between frantic jumps and wild gestures, she manages to squeak out that the spider is inside her shirt. She swipes at her clothes with increasing desperation. Finally, after what feels like an eternity of high-energy panic, the spider falls onto the floor. Yoda, still trembling, demands immediate action. Horror-Size picks up the tiny creature with a card and casually tosses it out the window, giving it the unceremonious eviction it probably never saw coming. Turning back, he expects to find Yoda breathing a sigh of relief. Instead, he's met with the sight of her trembling like a leaf, eyes brimming with unshed tears. It's a sight of her he's never seen before, a rare moment of genuine vulnerability. Haru returns home carrying a bag of groceries, setting them down with a sense of purpose. Yoda, ever the curious one, immediately peeks inside, eager to see if there's anything worth snacking on. With a smug grin, he reveals that he has brought melon bread specifically for her. With exams starting tomorrow, he figures a little sweetness might help kickstart some productive studying. Her face lights up like a child on Christmas morning. Before he even finishes his sentence, she's already reaching out with grabby hands, practically vibrating with excitement. He places the bread on a plate, and she's on it like a starved squirrel. Mid-bite, he casually points out that she has a dusting of powder on her face. Without hesitation, she licks it. Aru blinks, half impressed, half concerned for her complete lack of shame. Shaking his head, he leaves the room to grab some drinks. By the time he returns, the scene before him is both predictable and tragic. The plate is empty. Every last crumb has vanished, devoured in record time. He glances at Yoda-senpai, patting her stomach as if she just conquered a great feast. He asks about his share, and with absolutely no remorse, she extends what little remains already bitten into. With a firm shake of his head, he refuses the sad offering. Instead, he hands her a drink, watching as she happily gulps it down. Once the drink is finished, Haru attempts to bring the conversation back to the original plan, studying. Unfortunately, without a single shred of hesitation, she dramatically flops onto the couch, stretches like a lazy cat, and within seconds starts snoring. With exams finally over, Yoda sprawls out on the couch, releasing a long, exaggerated yawn. Drained from cramming and stress, she has no motivation left for anything productive. Haru settles onto the couch beside her, barely getting comfortable before she turns to him with expectant eyes. She declares that after all the hard work she put into studying, she deserves a proper reward. Without missing a beat, he reminds her of the melon breads he generousal. Why brought for her just a few days ago. She immediately waves off the suggestion, clearly unimpressed. She is in the mood for something different. After a brief pause, he offers an alternative. He suggests making her favorite dish for dinner. The moment those words leave his mouth, her exhaustion magically fades, replaced by a sparkle of excitement. The idea of food, especially his cooking, turns out to be the perfect motivator. He chuckles at her reaction, teasing that she only ever cares about food. She immediately refutes the claim, huffing that this meal is special, not because it's her favorite, but because he is the one making it. Before he can react, she announces that she too has a reward for him. Suspicion flickers across his face as he stares at her, bracing for whatever ridiculousness she has planned. With dramatic flair, she unveils her grand offering, a single wrapped candy. Haru blinks, glancing at the candy. She, unfazed, beams with pride as if presenting a rare treasure. He sighs, accepting his fate. The next day at school, Yoda spots Haru walking with his friends, completely engrossed in a discussion about last night's anime. His usual animated expressions and excited gestures make it clear that the conversation is nothing short of a life or death analysis of every plot twist. She watches him as he passes by, her fingers twitching slightly as if about to reach out. A familiar urge to call out to him bubbles up, but just as quickly, a memory surfaces, his strict warning about avoiding interactions in front of his friends. If she dares to approach, they will tease him mercilessly and he will be the one dealing with the aftermath. A small sigh escapes her lips. her mood dipping ever so slightly. The weight of that thought makes her pause, hesitating for a moment before stepping away. However, the faint sound of her shoes against the pavement catches his attention. He turns around, his gaze meeting hers just as she lifts her hand in a casual wave. A second of silence stretches between them before he, almost instinctively, mirrors the gesture. It's brief, but enough to put a small smirk back on her face. One of them nudges Haru, snapping him back to reality, and questions whether he is even paying attention. Haru blinks, quickly nodding, but the slight delay in his response doesn't go unnoticed. Later, Yoda and Haru are sitting comfortably on the couch, the atmosphere peaceful until he notices her absent-mindedly rubbing her right foot against the left. His curiosity gets the better of him, and with the utmost delicacy, he voices his concern, wondering if she might need to make a trip to the bathroom. Her response, however, is anything but delicate. She snaps at him, thoroughly offended by his blunt assumption. Undeterred by her outburst, his sharp eyes finally catch the culprit behind her odd movements, a hole in her sock. With a triumphant air, he points it out, prompting her to look at him in sheer disbelief. Suspicion flickers across her face as she demands to know how he could have possibly figured it out. His response is simple, almost nonchalant, of course, it was obvious. That, however, does not sit well with Haru. The idea that her grand effort to conceal such a trivial flaw has been so easily unraveled makes her want to silence him immediately, which she does in the most effective way she knows, by kicking him. Yoda, unfazed as always, instead reassures her, questioning if she was truly that worried about such a small thing. And just as smoothly, he lifts his foot to reveal his own sock's sorry state, a hole just as tragic as hers. Haru stares for a second before bursting into laughter, the tension vanishing in an instant. She gleefully declares them a perfect match, their friendship now elevated by the mutual destruction of their socks. Without hesitation, she taps his foot with hers, an official challenge to the most prestigious of games, foot wrestling. Just as the battle escalates, the door swings open and Misaki walks in. She halts mid-step, taking in the bizarre scene before her. Misaki blinks, silently questioning her life choices. Yoda, unfazed, seizes the moment. Just as Haru's foot falters, she dramatically declares victory, her triumphant shout echoing like a conquering hero's. Haru groans in defeat while Misaki sighs, already regretting walking in. Misaki Ono, Haru's elder sister, demands food, but Haru, ever the dramatic one, mumbles that he is the one cooking. If she has any complaints, she is more than welcome to cook for herself. After some time, he finally serves the food, and as expected, Yoda wastes no time in admiring his handiwork. Meanwhile, he finds himself in a predicament, choosing where to sit. His hesitation doesn't last long, as Yoda casually taps the seat beside her, offering the spot without a second thought. He accepts and barely settles in before she begins her not-so-subtle operation, scooping the carrots off her plate and onto his, as if nothing sus. Pishus is happening. She starts talking about their English teacher, but Haru, sharp as ever, immediately interrupts her mission. His focus is laser-sharp on one thing, her neglected carrots. He insists she eats them, much to her annoyance. With clear irritation, she questions why they are eating the meal in the first place. His response is simple. He isn't cooking just for her, so she has to deal with it. Faced with no other choice, she surrenders and agrees to eat them. Misaki, ever the observer, picks up on the exchange and turns her attention to Yoda. She takes a moment to process the situation before making an amusing realization. Yoda doesn't like carrots, that much is clear, but what really surprises her is how Haru knows about it so well. Without hesitation, she asks about it, eyes filled with curiosity. Misaki isn't one to let such details slide. Her gaze sharpens with suspicion as she looks between them. It wasn't that long ago when Haru barely spoke to Yoda, and now here he is, reading her like an open book. The shift is too obvious to ignore. With a knowing smirk, she suggests that perhaps their bond runs deeper than it appears. Yoda is quick to reject such an idea, but his reaction only fuels her curiosity. Haru, on the other hand, looks at him in shock as if he has just committed a great betrayal. Without missing a beat, she grabs his shirt and gives him a shake, making it very clear that they are in fact good friends. Misaki watches the chaos unfold with amusement. She leans back and recalls how, even during her student council meetings, these two were already suspiciously close. If that was the case back then, perhaps they're getting cozy at home. Her words hit like a sudden gust of wind, sending Haru into full panic mode. He stammers out of denial, but Misaki is relentless. She leans in with the ultimate question, if they are dating. The words land like a slap, striking Haru with unexpected force. His entire being freezes as if his very soul has been momentarily knocked out of his body. Misaki, clearly enjoying the reaction, points out how absurdly hyper he is getting, as if she has hit a nerve he wasn't prepared to confront. Haru, exhausted beyond belief, waves it off and firmly states that he has no such intentions. However, he knows full well that his words could be taken the wrong way, might not appreciate them, and the last thing he ever wants is to annoy her. To his relief, Yoda remains unbothered. She casually dismisses the concern, making it clear that there is nothing to be annoyed about. Misaki, however, isn't satisfied with such an easy answer. She narrows her eyes, pressing for clarification. Before she can dig any further, Yoda, ever the expert at escape, pulls a classic distraction move, making a ridiculous face to throw her off track. The sudden change in expression works, though Misaki remains unconvinced. Senpei sighs and tells him that simply accepting their closeness would be much easier in the long run. Not that it matters, he doesn't seem to mind any of this at all. Misaki, on the other hand, is growing increasingly irritated. Back and forth gossip between them is only making her more curious. Summer vacation has finally begun, but Haru finds himself engulfed in boredom, sprawled on the couch with a vacant stare. Just as he's about to surrender to the boredom, the doorbell rings. Yoda Senpei is standing confidently with a bag slung over her shoulder. She announces her intention to spend the holidays with them, her enthusiasm palpable. Haru stands there, momentarily speechless, processing her unexpected arrival. Sensing his hesitation, she leans in and with a knowing look, suggests that perhaps he was feeling lonely. Haru quickly dismisses the notion, shifting the focus back to her sudden appearance, especially since classes have ended. Unfazed, she explains that with nothing else on her agenda, she decided to make the most of the summer by spending it with him and Misaki. She eagerly shares her plans to visit various places together and has a list of activities lined up for them. Haru points out that Misaki won't return until evening, but Yoda is already aware and isn't deterred. She cheerfully declares that until Misaki's return, she intends to spend quality time with him. With a playful grin, she suggests they kick off their time together with a classic activity for the two of them playing cards. After finishing a satisfying meal, Yoda expresses gratitude to Haru for the delicious dish. Just as they are settling in, Misaki returns and casually announces that she is heading for a bath. Without hesitation, Yoda immediately suggests joining her. Misaki, clearly unimpressed, questions his reasoning. Yoda, unfazed, explains that they can scrub each other's backs, which is a completely normal and practical thing to do. He insists, and after some back and forth, Misaki leaves to shower alone. Meanwhile, Haru, sipping on juice, enjoys watching their little debate unfold like a live comedy show. Amused by the turn of events, Yoda suddenly throws in an unexpected request to let him join as well. The mere suggestion sends a jolt through him, causing him to nearly choke and spill his juice. Nasaki, now equally stunned, is left momentarily speechless, while Yoda, ever the advocate for communal bathing, finds the idea oddly entertaining. But as he pictures the scene in his mind, his spine tingles with an uncomfortable shiver. Yoda, ever perceptive, accuses him of indulging in bathroom-related fantasies. He admonishingly denies it, of course, but she refuses to back down, demanding he confess his imaginary mischief. Eventually, they both settle down to watch anime. Soon after, Misaki emerges from the shower, her hair still damp, wearing nothing but a small towel barely covering her chest and a pair of tiny panties. With zero concern for modesty, she casually tells Yoda that it's her turn to shower. Instead of appreciating the reminder, he groans in frustration, demanding that she wear something more appropriate. Misaki, however, sees absolutely nothing wrong with her choice of attire and argues that she is, in fact, dressed just fine. After a while, Yoda exits the bathroom, feeling refreshed, water droplets sliding down her neck and legs. He immediately averts his gaze, demanding she wear proper clothes since she isn't his sister. Without missing a beat, she lifts her shirt to reveal that she is wearing shorts all along. With a mischievous giggle, she calls him a pervert and teases him, asking if he actually wanted to see something. Haru, ever the exhausted victim of their antics, feigns ignorance, but she sees right through him, insisting that she knows exactly what he meant. Dealing with these two is nothing short of a mental marathon for Haru. Haru has been on edge all week, tormented by the agonizing cliffhanger from the last episode. Now finally, the moment of truth has arrived. The season's top enome is airing its final episode, and he is more than ready. There is no opening theme, a clear sign that the real action is about to unfold. His eyes are locked on the screen, heart pounding in anticipation. But just as the tension reaches its peak, a voice disrupts his focus. Yoda appears, bringing news that Misaki is snoring, making it impossible for her to sleep. As if that somehow concerns him, she then casually invites herself to join him, an idea that doesn't sit well with him. He shifts uncomfortably, but after a brief internal battle, allows her to sit beside him. It is a decision he will soon regret. The episode, meant to be a masterpiece of tension and thrill, is instead drowned out by her endless absurd questions. Haru, clinging to his patience, refuses to entertain her inquiries, but she is persistent. So in an act of ultimate distraction, she tugs at his shirt, shaking him as if trying to extract answers by force. His frustration boils over, and in a desperate attempt to quiet her, his hand instinctively lands on her lips. Silence falls. The room, the air, the very fabric of existence seems to pause for a moment. They both freeze, eyes widening in mutual shock. His hand remains where it is, his brain failing to compute what just happened. She, on the other hand, takes the opportunity to make things even more awkward, pointing out rather playfully that they might have just kissed. Haru recoils immediately, scrambling to deny it as if his very dignity depends on it. It was just an unconscious reaction. The tension still lingers as he stumbles through an apology, but she surprises him by apologizing first, claiming she was the one who disturbed him. With a sudden sense of finality, she rises, announcing her return to bed. The door swings open, and with a soft smile, she bids him good night before disappearing into the hallway. He responds in kind before the door clicks shut. The final episode concludes with a grand, breathtaking climax, but Haru barely registers any of it. His mind is hopelessly tangled in the moment that just passed. He tells himself he is overthinking it, just a meaningless accident, nothing to dwell on. Yet on the other side of the door, she stands quietly, her fingers resting on her lips. A small, unreadable smile plays on her face as she lingers on the very same thought. Spring has arrived, bringing with it a gentle warmth that makes everything feel just a little lazier. Haru is stretched out on the couch, eyes glued to his mobile screen, watching anime with the kind of focus usually reserved for serious matters. A manga he once enjoyed has been adapted into an anime, and he's completely absorbed in his own little world. Just as he is about to find something interesting, a voice calls out, asking if he has returned. He doesn't even need to think it must be his sister. But when he glances up, the reality is far less predictable. Standing there, apologizing for the sudden intrusion, is none other than Yoda. As if this wasn't already an unexpected turn of events, Misaki follows right behind. The look on her face suggests she is not particularly thrilled about Yoda's presence. Yoda, on the other hand, is completely unfazed, casually explaining that since she and Vasaki are in the same class this year and live nearby, she figured it would be fun to hang out with them. Haru, however, is in no mood for spontaneous socialization. With a blank, unreadable expression, he gets up, fully prepared to leave the room without another word. Yoda, ever persistent, asks him to stay and chat for a bit, but his lack of enthusiasm is almost comical. Misaki, with a knowing grin, points out that as an anime otaku, he much prefers to watch anime alone, likely grinning to himself like a mad scientist with a grand plan. Yoda, always brimming with energy, decides to pry further, asking about his favorite anime. Without much thought, he mutters the name Yoji Jikugo-chan, but her blank reaction is all the proofing needs. She has never heard of it. His judgment is swift and merciless. She is a casual fan. With that conclusion reached, he wastes no more time, pulling open the door and making his escape. After a while, he is back. To his bewilderment, Yoda is now crying on the couch. His first instinct is to assess the situation, but before he can, she points to the screen, devastated by the heart-wrenching separation of two anime characters. The sheer tragedy of it has reduced her to tears. Between sniffles, she talks about her favorite character and the mere 4 episodes she has watched so far. The burning need to see the next episodes is practically pouring out of her in the form of emotional waterfalls. Unfortunately, it is time for her to head home. Just as she prepares to leave, he casually tells her she can come again as she wants to watch more. Her reaction is immediate delight flashing across her face as she eagerly accepts the invitation. The very next day, she is at their home once again, looking as comfortable as if she had always belonged there. When questioned about her sudden presence, she simply reminds him that he was the one who invited her. Haru, groggy from restless night thanks to last night's chaos, busies himself in the kitchen, making toast and slathering jam on bread. Just as he's lost in his thoughts, the door creaks open and shuffles Yoda, yawning and rubbing her eyes like a sleepy cat. She plops onto a chair, grabs a slice of toast, and takes a bite. A few chews later, she looks up and without hesitation, demands another slice because, apparently, one just isn't enough for her royal appetite. Haru blinks, half expecting some lingering tension from last night, but she's munching away like nothing ever happened. Maybe he is overthinking things. With a sigh, he gets up to toast another slice, silently accepting his fate as an unpaid breakfast chef. As Haru clears the kitchen, Yoda casually announces her grand plan. She's heading to the pool with Misaki. With a playful grin, she tells him to come along. Aru, without missing a beat, flat out refuses. No hesitation, no sugarcoating, just a solid no. Yoda smirks and teases him about not wanting to see her in a swimsuit. He nearly chokes on air but quickly recovers, waving off the comment. His problem isn't the swimsuit, it's the idea of being surrounded by loud, overly social people. The thought alone is exhausting. He'd much rather stay home and binge anime in peace. Determined to break his resistance, Yoda paints a vivid picture of the fun awaiting them. The water slide, the wave pool, the sheer excitement of it all. Haru remains unfazed, declaring that she can enjoy such activities with his sister. Switching tactics, Yoda asks for fashion advice. A bikini, a perio, or a one-piece. Haru's brain stalls for a second. He blinks at her in astonishment. She grins knowingly, accusing him of imagining her in those outfits, secretly wanting to tag along. Still unmoved, Haru barely reacts until she leans in slightly and whispers that if she shows him a picture, he'll confirm which one suits her best. Haru, not letting her get the last word, swiftly covers his ears in mock frustration. Meanwhile, she just sighs, wondering how he ended up in yet another ridiculous conversation. I know I walked away had to find the person I'd become.